with Ukraine. Measles case counts climb again. The once contained outbreak in Texas now crawling through New Mexico as testing escalates. And mystery solved, what we've just learned about the death of Hollywood legend Gene Hackman and his wife. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Good Friday evening. We're glad you're with us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Right now, President Trump is threatening new sanctions and tariffs on Russia, ramping up pressure on the Kremlin to agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine. This is the first time since taking office that Trump has issued a public threat against Russia.
We're doing very well with Russia. But right now they're bombing the hell out of Ukraine, and I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine. And they don't have the cards. In terms of getting a final settlement, it may be easier dealing with Russia.
And overnight, Russia launched a missile attack on Ukrainian energy facilities. It comes after Trump paused all U.S. military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine earlier this week. The move raising concerns that Ukraine's air defenses could become less effective. And the president also says he's written a letter to Iran's supreme leader in hopes of negotiating a new nuclear deal. In his first term, the president withdrew the U.S. from the agreement. In an interview aired today on Fox News, Trump said something's going to happen one way or another, reiterating the possibility of a military attack if a deal isn't reached. Iran's foreign minister says the country won't enter direct negotiations under the current policy pressures and threats from the U.S. The February jobs report shows the unemployment rate rose slightly to 4.1%. The private sector bracing for more uncertainty over President Trump's sweeping tariffs, while federal workers wonder if their jobs are safe. National correspondent Audra El-Nashar reports from Washington.
President Trump's first full month back in office saw 151,000 jobs added to the economy, slightly missing the mark of most economists' predictions. The leading sectors, healthcare and financial activities like insurance and real estate. With President Trump and Elon Musk's DOGE efforts slashing federal jobs, it's no surprise federal government employment declined by 10,000 in February. But since February's report is based on a survey taken the week of the 12th,
government workers will probably have a bigger decline next month,
which the president is celebrating.
We had too many people in government. You can't just do that. We had too many.
The impact goes far beyond people in government.
Investors and business leaders have had their confidence undermined by the high degree of uncertainty that has been essentially projected by the administration.
So far this year, employers have announced more than 221,000 job cuts, the highest year-to-date level since the Great Recession, according to the outplacement firm Challenger Gray and Christmas. The firm pointed to impacts of DOGE, canceled government contracts, and fear of trade wars.
The White House is still saying they expect a bump in manufacturing jobs because they say these tariffs will push companies to move their production lines into the United States. Is it that simple?
We've already seen the federal government document that 10,000 jobs were lost early in this process. And so we also saw that there was a small rise in manufacturing and construction jobs in the very same month. So my question would be, does one make up for the other? And I don't think it will.
In addition to changes to the job market, tariffs, or even just the threat of tariffs, are also threatening to push up prices here in the U.S.
Well, we eat a lot of avocados every week, and so that's probably going to stop.
President Trump, who's imposed and delayed tariffs several times just this week, starting to acknowledge this.
There could be some disturbance, a little bit of disturbance.
In Washington, I'm Audra El-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
At any moment now, a South Carolina death row inmate is set to die by firing squad. 67-year-old Brad Sigmund was convicted of killing his ex-girlfriend's parents with a baseball bat in 2001. Following the murders, Sigmund kidnapped his ex-girlfriend, who managed to escape. Sigmund will be the first person to die by firing squad in 15 years. He chose the method over lethal injection and the electric chair. The CDC is now planning on a large-scale study looking into the connection of vaccines and autism. Previous studies have failed to find a direct correlation, and it's unclear if HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is associated with this new study. This, as a measles outbreak in several states has infected many non-vaccinated people. At least 2 deaths have been reported, the first deaths in the U.S. from measles in more than 10 years. A federal judge has ended the ability of compounding pharmacies to make their own versions of Eli Lilly's weight loss drugs. Compounders had been allowed to produce and sell their own versions of drugs like Zepbound and Mounjaro as long as the FDA considered them in shortage. The lawsuit brought by a compound pharmacy trade group tried and failed to stop the FDA from declaring the shortage was over. Eli Lilly says the knockoffs aren't safe to use. Live look over the border town of Presidio, Texas. Right now, ranchers along the U.S.-Mexico border, they say they are playing chess to keep smugglers off their land. One rancher showed us a newly installed spiked gate meant to take out a radiator if a vehicle tries to push it open. He says it's gotten so expensive to protect his farm as well as his family after smugglers stole his vehicles and broke into his home.
It's just a chess match. This is my last move, and there'll be another one coming.
How long until this becomes a thing of the past?
Until they find another way of getting around it.
Martin says he's grateful migrant crossings in between ports of entry have decreased over the past year. The Trump administration recently touting a drop in encounters at Eagle Pass. 2 active U.S. Army soldiers and 1 retired soldier have been arrested on crimes related to national security. Jan Guillenajo, stationed at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington State, was charged with conspiring to transmit national defense information to China. Photos from the FBI, they show top secret hard drives the men collected in exchange, we're told, for cash. The FBI says the action could have gotten U.S. troops killed.
This is something that really is personal to me because before I joined the FBI, I was stationed at then Fort Lewis, now Joint Base Lewis McChord. I was one of the soldiers that could have been endangered by this type of activities.
The FBI hasn't shared specifics about which data was leaked, just that it contained information about military planning and the military's capabilities. New information about the deaths of actor Gene Hackman and his wife. New Mexico authorities say Ms. Hackman likely passed away days before her husband of hantavirus. That's a disease contracted from rodents. The pills found near her body were thyroid medication that did not play a role in her death. For Mr. Hackman, an autopsy found severe heart disease, signs of prior heart attacks, advanced Alzheimer's in the brain, but no signs of trauma. The couple was found dead in their home on February 26th. And a live look over the White House right now, where the Trump administration is cutting federal funding to Columbia University. $400 million for failing to combat anti-Semitic protests. National correspondent Janae Bowens has a closer look at the controversy.
Chaos at Columbia University and its affiliate, Barnard College, as pro-Palestinian protests broke out this week. NYPD made several arrests. Amid the unrest, the Trump administration is canceling $400 million in federal grants and contracts to Columbia University due to what they say is the school's continued inaction in the face of persistent harassment of Jewish students.
The president has said he's absolutely not going to allow federal funds to be going to these universities that continue to allow anti-Semitism on its campus.
The administration's decision aligns with recent executive orders aimed at combating anti-Semitism and foreign terrorist threats. In response, a Columbia University spokesperson stated, "We are reviewing the announcement from the federal agencies and pledge to work with the federal government to restore Columbia's federal funding. We take Columbia's legal obligations seriously and understand how serious this announcement is and are committed to combating anti-Semitism and ensuring the safety and well-being of our students, faculty, and staff." The president also said on Truth Social, agitators will be imprisoned or permanently sent back to the country from which they came. In line with the president, the State Department told Fox News that they removed the first foreign student linked to Hamas supporting disruptions on Wednesday. ICE will proceed with removing them from the country. Meanwhile, Trump's critics say his crackdown violates the protesters' constitutional free speech rights. And pro-Palestinian demonstrators say they remain undeterred.
These repressive measures are scary, but ultimately not something that is going to stop us in the work that we're doing.
The Trump administration says the funding freeze is just the first step in a broader response to what they call a rise in anti-Semitic incidents on campuses. In Washington, I'm Janae Bowens reporting for the National News Desk.
Still ahead on the National News Desk, a massive bomb threat at the world's third largest train station. Why authorities in Paris had to defuse a decades-old explosive. Plus, missing the mark. A lunar probe fails its landing on the surface of the moon. The pictures it sent before going silent. And later, where local business owners are now considering cuts and possibly closing their doors for good amid another minimum wage increase. Train services have resumed and roads have reopened after an unexploded World War II bomb has been safely disposed of in France. In a statement, the agency said the union representing the staffers was hindering payment information systems. She did, however, acknowledge privacy concerns about their work. The systems hold sensitive personal data for millions of Americans on Social Security and Medicaid. After weeks of slashing federal spending, along with growing pushback, the power of DOJ has been curbed slightly by the president. The National News Desk, Matt Gelka, reports from Washington.
DOJ might finally have a leash following weeks of moves that have caused confusion, court cases, and chaos in the federal government workforce. In a lengthy post Thursday, the president praised the Department of Government Efficiency and billionaire Elon Musk while clarifying cabinet secretaries will have the final say on downsizing. Writing in part, they can be very precise as to who will remain and who will go. We say the scalpel rather than the hatchet. The New York Times reports the meeting of the minds this week wasn't so cordial, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy reportedly getting into it with Musk over staffing cuts at their departments.
Elon gets along great with Marco, and they're both doing a fantastic job. There is no clash.
The report is notable because mostly only Democrats had been pushing back on what they perceived as reckless DOJ cuts.
They just fired people. So DOJ essentially is about getting a body count, as many people as you can fire as quickly as possible and then claim savings.
The president's post about using a scalpel comes as a hatchet is being planned for the Department of Education, with the administration wanting to dismantle it and new Education Secretary Linda McMahon in full support and sounding like a person who wants to put herself out of a job.
Do we need this department?
No, we don't.
McMahon and other Republicans argue that because the department doesn't set curriculum, states can be more involved in the actual teaching of students, while the main department tasks of managing money can be handled by other agencies.
We've spent over $1 trillion to see our scores continue to go down. We are not doing something right, and it's time to change it.
Elon Musk also posted about the reportedly explosive meeting with cabinet officials after the president called for a more measured approach, calling the meeting very productive. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
The Athena moon mission is a failure, and the Texas-based initiative's machine says their lunar lander is dead. Yesterday, the Athena module landed on the moon but missed its target by more than 800 feet and ended up in a crater. Athena managed to send back pictures confirming its position and activate a few experiments before going silent. The mission was planned to land near the south pole of the moon to test samples for ice. The FAA is ordering Elon Musk's SpaceX to conduct a mishap investigation after it had to briefly halt some flights into Florida because of falling space debris following the launch of the company's Starship mega rocket system. The uncrewed spacecraft lifted off from SpaceX's Starbase facility in South Texas Thursday. It was a stress test following a previous failure in January. However, minutes into the flight, engines started to go out, resulting in a fiery explosion visible from parts of Florida. Several airports were forced to delay all flights while debris rained down from the sky. Shipping giant Amazon is facing calls for a week-long boycott. The movement, started by the People's Union USA, was started to send, quote, a message loud enough to shake up the system. Organizers claim Amazon hurts small businesses and exploits its workforce. The union is also pushing for people to avoid Amazon subsidiaries like Ring, Whole Foods, and Prime Video. Amazon has not issued a comment on the matter. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. From stolen SNAP benefits in Rhode Island to concerns over another minimum wage hike in California. We're taking the pulse of America. But we start with a man in court that was accused of planning a shooting at a Virginia church.
U.S. attorneys laid out a mountain of evidence before a jury in federal court, which they say proves Roy Zhang intended to kill congregants at Prince William County's Park Valley Church on September 24, 2023, 48 hours before he visited Sunday service with a loaded gun and ammo in his pocket. Prosecutors say Zhang took a series of steps to carry out a shooting. Prosecutors told the jury Zhang bought a semi-automatic gun, 50 bullets, and he practiced shooting, and he took pictures of his weaponry. Prosecutors also said Zhang visited the church around 2 a.m. the day of the service and drove around to do surveillance. In various notes and social media posts leading up to September 24, 2023, the U.S. attorney said Zhang wrote, quote, "I'm not going out until I kill or expletive somebody. I can't wait to destroy God, and I am here to target men and to deny men the life God actually denies me every day," end quote.
Almost a year later, and California's Fast Food Council is considering another potential minimum wage hike.
The living wage in California is over $27 an hour. So when we talk about folks making $20 an hour, they're still under the living wage in California.
In a recent meeting, business owners around the state opposed the idea.
The domino effect is real and inevitable.
Javier Gomez, a Fresno business owner of Capriati's Sandwich Shop, stands by those opposed of another wage increase for the same reasons. He says he is barely surviving as is.
Knowing that we're going to have to take another increase on the minimum wage, we have to make some dramatic changes. Do we cut back on hours of operation? Do we cut back on our menu items?
For thousands of Rhode Islanders, the first of the month means one thing: grocery shopping. But this week,
I checked the app and it said zero balance.
Sandra is one of more than 1,800 victims of a skimming scheme that's drained nearly $500,000 from EBT cards in Providence, Cranston, and Pawtucket. Fraudsters attach skimming devices to payment machines to grab card data and PINs.
I had about 3 transactions done at the same exact time.
Screenshots shared with NBC 10 show the money being removed from their accounts. Sandra losing more than $1,000 just hours after it was deposited.
Food stamp situation is so crazy. I don't even know how it's that possible. And so many people at once.
Imagine leaving your greatest asset unprotected from disaster. The tough decisions some Americans are being forced to make when we come back. For most Americans, their biggest investment is home. But with skyrocketing home insurance premiums and policy non-renewals, Spotlight on America discovered a growing number of homeowners are making.
All of a sudden, things have gotten out of control.
But Florida homeowner Larry Bendick decided to take that risk 2.5 years ago, canceling his policy after his premium went up $1,200 that year alone.
So you made a pretty big decision to go self-insured.
Yes.
Was that a hard decision? I mean, that's a little risky.
Even if something happened, I would still get stuck with a big bill anyway.
Retirees from Maryland, Larry and his wife Mona, have lived in their Lutz home now for nearly 30 years and paid off their mortgage, making it possible for them to cancel coverage, which you can't do if you still have a loan from the bank. Bendick calls it a calculated risk because his home is inland and he had a very high deductible.
It didn't make sense to pay that premium and in the end, get very little in return.
The homeowners insurance market, unfortunately, is broken.
Michael DeLong is an analyst with the Consumer Federation of America. He says the trend of dramatic increases in premiums and policy non-renewals is forcing a record number of people to drop insurance.
It's kind of understandable that some people would look at this and be like, I need to drop my insurance because I just can't afford it, but it's still a very bad idea. You are completely on the hook for repairing or rebuilding your home if it gets damaged or destroyed.
A 2023 survey from the Insurance Information Institute showed 12% of American homeowners didn't have home insurance, up more than double from just 5% in 2019.
The people who often needed protection the most because they were least able to recover from disasters, they often were the people people who didn't have it.
A CFA report released in 2024 found homeowners earning under $50,000 a year are twice as likely to lack home insurance compared to homeowners in general. And homeowners of color were disproportionately at higher risk, with 22% of Native Americans, 14% of Hispanics, and 11% of black homeowners without insurance. Following the California wildfires, many residents there are feeling the real-time impact of not having home insurance. A recent Lending Tree study found nearly 1 in 10 Los Angeles homes had no insurance, leaving many paying out of pocket and seeking federal and state help to rebuild.
I still continue every year saving the premium.
When Bendick canceled his policy in 2022, his premium had already climbed to nearly $6,000 a year, and rates have continued to rise. The Tampa Bay area has weathered 2 hurricanes since he canceled coverage, and thankfully the Bendick's home suffered no damage. He says it's a risk he's willing to continue to take unless home insurance rates come down. For Spotlight on America, I'm Angie Moreski.
Coming up next, Tesla targeted vandals shooting up dealerships for the second time in recent weeks. The search for the suspect happening right now. At thousands of dollars in repair bills. You just saw that glass behind me. Tesla dealership in Salem, Oregon was also hit in late February. And you either love it or you hate it. But regardless, it's time to spring forward. Daylight saving time starts this Sunday at 2 a.m. when clocks will turn ahead an hour. Your phone will remind you, of course. The plus side, there will be later sunrises and more sunlight during the day. These longer days will help usher in the spring season starting on the 20th. Daylight saving time ends on November 2nd when clocks fall back by 1 hour. And that's going to do it for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tonight at 10.